Survivor Advocacy Committee. It was a joint project between Vanderbilt and the Harry Medical Center. I asked her to tell her story tonight. She is a lady of true courage and faith, and I hope that you'll help me welcome her now.
Madison. It's so good to be here. And
can you speak into speaker? Thank you.
Yes, I can. So I wasn't supposed to be here when I was diagnosed in 2008. My doctor, I asked him how much time he thought I had, and he said, well, 9 to 12 months if you do chemo, and 6 months or less if you don't. And I looked at him really quickly, and I told him, I said, I promise you, I will be here this time next year. And it rolled around, and here I am 8 years later. In the beginning of early 2007, it started off with my husband, who was having problems with memory loss and depression, and that required him to take an early retirement at 57. I was working full-time at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital as a respiratory therapist. I primarily took care of children with cystic fibrosis and asthmatics. At that time, I had just recently lost 3 of my patients, and I was really dealing with that. One of the children that I was working with, he was losing his will to live, and I tried different ways to help motivate him to survive. And currently he's 23, so he's doing really well too. He had a double lung transplant 2 years ago. My oldest child at the time was in Hawaii. He was a student, and we were planning to visit him there after Christmas. I also turned 50 that fall, and about a few weeks after I turned 50, I had a blood clot pop up in my right arm. During the month of December, I was in 2 different hospitals, and they were running tests trying to find cancer, but they couldn't find it. So then on Christmas Day, I had a really big surprise. My son's girlfriend at the time delivered a newborn baby on Christmas Day. She was a complete surprise to all of us, even my now daughter-in-law. She found out 20 hours. She delivered her baby 20 hours after she found out she was pregnant. That's a whole nother story. January 28 comes along. I'm having difficulty walking. I go to my PCP, and ultrasound reveals that I had lymphadenopathy in both my legs. The next week, I couldn't walk at all. So I go back, and my sister Vicki, who's here tonight, she was with me, and the little girl was doing an ultrasound, and she kept saying, oh, this wasn't there last week, this wasn't there last week. And I just looked at her, and I said, shut up, call the doctors to come down, call Vanderbilt, tell them I'm coming, and give me an ambulance. Well, if you've got blood clots, don't ride in an ambulance. So my right leg was totally occluded. So on the way to Vanderbilt, 5 minutes before we got there, my leg quit hurting, and my lungs started hurting. My back started hurting. So when I got in there, I put my hand on my chest, and I told the doctor, I said, my lungs are filling up. I can feel it. So they did a CT scan, and sure enough, I had a very large blood clot in my right lower lobe in my lung. And now this was the 3rd clot I had in my lung. So, trying to follow my notes here. The pain was really intense. It felt like somebody was hitting me in the back with a sledgehammer. So, no more ambulance rides for me. And the length of stay at Vanderbilt was 11 days. Prayers from around the world began being lifted up for me. My family and friends took vigil around me 24/7. I was at Vanderbilt 11 days, and then I stayed in hotels that were donated to me for 6 days until I saw my oncology team. My doctor was Alan Sandler, and Dr. Horn was on his team also. So I know her from then. And when the hospital doctor came into my room, she said, "Well, we found out what you have." And they had done multiple tests on me in the hospital. And I told people, I said, I'd probably light up like a Christmas tree because I'd had so many tests and procedures done. And she came in and she said, well, you have a right lower lung pneumonia. And I said, well, I'm a respiratory therapist, and I know you don't have to have 3 lobes on your right side, so just take it out. And she said, no, we can't do that because it's already moved to another area. So I thought, well, okay, then what are we going to do about it? So I never cried, I never got upset. I just wanted to do something to make it go away. In February 2008, I met my oncologist, Alan Sandler, for the first time. He told me I had stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer. Like I said, I asked him how long I had to live, and he said, 9 months to a year with chemo and 6 months or less without. Well, then in March, I began a clinical trial with Tarceva. 3 weeks later, until the trial revealed 30% growth of my tumor, he immediately stopped it, and I went on chemotherapy. I did 4 rounds of paclitaxel and carboplatin every 3 weeks. Friends from church brought me 1 quart of fresh organic carrot juice every day for 6 months. I went vegan, and I continued the carrot juice diet for 2 years. I was pretty orange, but I was healthy. And I also listened to healing tapes, so I knew what God said about His will for us to be healed. So I had no doubt about that. 1 year later, the tumor in the cancer cells has shrunk dramatically. Dr. Sandler transfers out of Vanderbilt to another area, and Vicki Keedy becomes my oncologist, and I love her. I returned to work part-time and eventually worked up to 2 12-hour shifts. I continued to do well, but by 2011, 2 of our children were married, and we now had 2 more beautiful granddaughters. My husband of 32 years had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's and continued to disappear right before my eyes. My cancer became active again at that time. I took leave from work. Dr. Keedy suggested several options for chemo. After 5 months of prayer, I decided to do it. I did a limited chemotherapy every 3 weeks for 8 months. After it was done, she said it was going away. She said, well, maybe this will buy you another 2.5 years. And I told her, 2.5 years, nothing. I'm done with cancer, and I'm done with chemotherapy. And I haven't had any since. So by now, my husband was requiring 24-hour day care. Sitters were hired, and family friends stepped up to help me with his care. Hospice was called in, and on my birthday, October 1st, 2012, he went to be with the Lord. I'm at peace with his passing, and I know where he is, and I know I'll see him again one day. I decided not to return to work, but to rest and be with my family and travel. I traveled to Alaska in 2013 with my siblings, and there's some of them here now. God's handiwork was all over Alaska. It was beautiful. Last year in 2014, I took a mission trip to Cuba on a religious visa. This was before they had opened the released the stock. I'm sorry, I'm losing my mark here. The people there knew very little about the outside world. It was like stepping back in time, and they were hungry to learn about it. This was before the U.S. embargo was lifted from Cuba. During my oncology visit that year, Dr. Keedy told me that I was in the 1 percentile of how my body responded to therapy, of the type of chemotherapy that I had. And I told her, I'll take that 1%. I also visited Italy with my children in June, and my daughter Casey's here, and we traveled there, and that was a lot of fun and a lot of walking. A lot. Then I joined a committee to work on our 40th class reunion. While trying to update former students' addresses, I found an old classmate. And he was the most amazing man. We were married in April of this year.
Oh, that's nice.
Tonight, my husband is with me, Chuck, and his daughter Amy. Also, my family support team, my daughter Casey, and siblings Vicki and Gary, and Billy and Barb. Thank you for sharing this with me. Through the last 8 years, I've learned to take one day for granted, and to be grateful every morning that I wake up. I've stopped trying to do everything by myself, and I never turn down anyone who offers to help. Just ask my husband. He volunteered to help me locate students, and look what that got him. Material things aren't what's important. Your family and your friends are what is important. Don't take yourself or others for granted. Thank you.